Hey, the water's clear and innocent. What's up? It's the Culture Detective here investigating your favorite albums. And today I am going to do a review on Radiohead's Moon Shaped Pool. Yes, so I have finally come to my last review of my Radiohead album review series, and after this, I have no review plan to do. After this, other than albums from 2020, of course. But, anyways, let's talk about A Moon Shaped Pool, released in May 2016. Radiohead, I know I've said this a billion times already, but Radiohead is my favorite band of all time, okay? The vocalist, Tom York, is a true artist. Johnny Greenwood, the composer, is really artistic and is just simply a genius. His brother, Colin Greenwood, is a great bassist. Ed O'Brien is a very charismatic lead guitarist, and Phil Selway is a very talented drummer. We also have Nigel Godrich, part of the production, as well as Stanley Donwood, responsible for this very, very interesting looking album cover, which in my opinion is really beautiful, and the white, black, gray combination just goes to show that this album, it's going to be a sad one. Radiohead had come a very, very long way. I mean, starting off, they have Pablo Honey, which everyone knows that it's not one of their bests. But after that, they have just been getting better and better and better, and they have been constantly putting out some amazing music for decades and decades. We have OK Computer, which is a really depressing, sad alt rock album with some of the most well written songs of all times. Kid A is one of the greatest and most impressive left turns in musical history for how experimental yet powerful and just brilliant and creative yet catchy the songs are on that album. It's like 10 tracks, but 10 very separate worlds, and each one of them are just amazing. We have In Rainbows, which a lot of people consider their favorite Radiohead album to be because it is so colorful, exciting, it brings back the alt rock element, yet it still excels beyond everything. It's still emotionally powerful, absolutely beautiful, poignant, and lovely. And afterwards, in the year 2011, they dropped The King of Limbs, which is a very short and strange album where they experiment a lot with loops, polyrhythms, and with the first 5 tracks being fast-paced tracks and the last 3 being slow burns. It's a pretty strange album, and the results were polarizing. Some of them thought that this album is their worst, and some of them thought it was alright. And in my opinion, The King of Limbs is just alright. It's not terrible, but it could have been so much better if the B-sides were included in the studio version. Yeah. A Moonshaped Pool is their latest album. I don't know if they're gonna come out with an album in this year or in 2021. Hopefully so, but let's not rush them. But given that Tom York at around the recording of this album had broken up with his ex-wife, and also because some band members' family members had passed away, so we're in for a very sad and depressing album again. And yeah, this album is somber. It's very acoustic heavy. Instead of being very looped and electronic and strange and experimental, this one is more acoustic, more stripped back, and definitely sad. Very, very sad. I don't recommend people who had never listened to Radiohead go to this album first, because this album is a lot to take in, and it's definitely not as accessible as some of the other Radiohead stuff. And what really surprises me is that Radiohead, they always make sad music. Yes, that's true. But every time they make a sad song, they're always slightly different. There's the very transparent, clear kind of sad, like on Codex. There's the very dreamy but and blissful, but also kind of soulful and lost kind of sad. On Nude, we have my favorite Radiohead song, How to Disappear Completely, which has this very haunting and sort of chilling kind of sad, which is amazing. And we have Street Spirits Fade Out, which is simply a very dark song that just sucks your soul away. And this one, A Moon-Shaped Pool, is dreary, definitely sad. Unlike OK Computer. OK Computer is still a very loud album. It's like a very long and dramatic cry for help. But A Moon-Shaped Pool sounds more like a sob in the corner of a room. It's so much more different, yet it's just as sad and depressing. And before the release of this album, Thom Yorke had also done other projects like his other solo album, Tomorrow's Modern Boxes, which in my opinion is just a pretty mediocre electronic album. He had also been in another band called Atoms for Peace alongside with Flea and Nigel Godrich, where they come out with some pretty good songs, such as Enig. There's also a single. I forgot when was the single released, but it's called Feeling Pulled Apart by Horses, and it's just a banger. Anyways, let's go back to A Moon-Shaped Pool. I remember when I was 13 years old. It was May. I was studying in Form 2 in my secondary school, and it was May 19th, I think, and I knew that their new album is going to be released on that day, and I just kept on. And because I was at school, and when I was at school, using my mobile phone is illegal. You can't do that. You have to lock your mobile phone up. If the teacher saw you using your mobile phone, you're going to get caught and you're going to be in big trouble. But we have a computer class that everyone needs to take. And while in computer class, I went to the Google Radiohead page, Radiohead website, and I kept on refreshing the page over and over and over again because I was so anticipated for the release of this album. And I still remember how excited I was and how happy I was when this album was released. What's also kind of special about this album is that if you look at the track list, all of the tracks are arranged in an alphabetical way, which is really strange. But surprisingly, the tracks still flow together really, really, really well. But that's also partially because some of the tracks are actually renamed. The numbers originally was called Silent Spring, and present tense originally was called the present tense, though LMNOP, I don't think it would have mattered. But still pretty interesting fun fact about this album. So opening off the album, we have the track Burn the Witch, and it's while yes, the rest of the album is incredibly sad, somber, and downtrodden, Burn the Witch is another story. It's demented, it's frightening, it's black magic in a song. We get these very intense, plucky strings. In fact, there's a lot of strings on this album, and they're all arranged by Johnny Greenwood. Johnny Greenwood had also collaborated with director Paul Thomas Anderson on a few movies, such as There Will Be Blood, which is one of the best movies of the 2010s. Johnny Greenwood's responsible for arranging a lot of the strings on this album, and they're all really fantastic, lively, intense, beautiful, poetic. And on Burn the Witch, it's very plucky, intense, scary, demented. We also get these heavy buzzing keyboards, and we get these lyrics: if you float, you'll burn, referring to the Salem witch trials. We have loose talk around tables, abandon all reason, avoid all eye contact, do not react. And we also got a really scary, cultish stop motion music video, which is brilliantly directed. And just the strings at the end, the way they swell up, it's so dissonant yet lively, and we have a horrifyingly dramatic ending to the track, which is just spectacular. What a way to open off the album. And for the second track, we have Daydreaming, which is a 6.5 minute long track in 6/8 time signature, and it's a really, really sad song. It's spacey, simplistic, atmospheric. There are parts of the track that feels innocent and lovely, but also there are other parts that feel regretful and somewhat down. Again, every single sad song they make sound different. It doesn't have the transparency like Codex, nor does it have the sourness or the dreariness like other sad songs like Knives Out. But still, it's a really beautiful and poetic song, and especially the opening lyrics of the track, "Dreamers, they never learn, they never learn." And yeah, on this track is pretty much Tom York sort of talking about how he failed when it comes to balancing between his musical life and his own personal family life, which had led to the breakup between Tom York and his ex-wife. And also, not too long after the release of this project, actually, his ex-wife actually passed away, which I'm sure was really, really heartbreaking for him as well. So it just goes to show the sadness. And yeah, the warm pianos, bubbles during the choruses, or more like after the choruses, and they're really, really beautiful. That's one of the things I love about Radiohead songs, is that even in a sad song, there would be bits and pieces of happiness in the middle, just to sort of tease you, like, look, happiness, look, hope. Psych, it's all sadness. And we also have a music video directed by, of course, Paul Thomas Anderson, PTA, and it's a really beautifully directed video as well. And towards the end of the track, we get these reversed vocals by Tom York, "Half of my life, half of my life," which basically means half of his life he is not in Radiohead, and half of his life he is in Radiohead. And it just goes to show that he has been in this band for so long, and music has been this important to him. And yeah, the swelling strings in the back are also incredibly beautiful. Up next, we have the third track, Dex Dark, and personally, this might be my favorite track on the entire album. Dex Dark. It just grew so much on me, and I just absolutely love this track. We get a very steady drum beat as well as these bubbling pianos in the beginning, and it sort of builds this very haunting, spacey atmosphere, like something wrong is about to happen, or actually had already happened. And the lyrics on this album actually sort of talk about an alien invasion, and of course it's metaphorical, but still the doom and the gloom of this track is just very beautifully and poetically portrayed through the lyrics and the instrumentals, and it just feels very grim and very chilling as well. The choral vocals are very haunting and dramatic in the back, and it's such a nice touch. And we also get the bridge of the track, "But it was just a laugh, just a laugh, but it was just a laugh, just a laugh," and it just feels very doomed, very painful. You can actually feel the agony through the vocals. And the ending of the track is absolutely stellar, where we get these ragged guitars and bold pianos that just suddenly switch keys from something bitter and dreary to something very cold and just broken, I guess, with lyrics like "Have you had enough of me?" "Sweet Dark," and it's just a very dark and bold and sort of ominous ending to the track that I just really, really love. There's a layer of cinematicness to the track that I just absolutely adore. And then on the fourth track, we have Desert Island Disc. Okay, it's getting to be really shiny. I don't know what's going on. The fourth track is Desert Island Disc, and it's a pretty simple and straightforward acoustic guitar ballad. And even though for the first half of the track there really isn't much progression, so it's definitely not one of the more memorable tracks from Radiohead, Still, it's not bad at all. I like the ambient backdrop, which slowly becomes this slightly jazzy, more trapped miniature jam, and it's really amazing. And this track is sort of like Subterranean Homesick Alien meets Faust ARP, and it sounds pretty warm and lovely, and thoughtful as well. Really nice ballad. Anyways, up next we have Full Stop, which is a 6-minute long, hectic, anxiety inducing track with syncopated drums terrorizing deserty keyboards, swelling strings that occasionally float up and occasionally fade back into the background, and you can't really predict when or when won't the strings show up because it's very irregular and unpredictable. We get these echoey thin loops of crispy keyboards, which adds onto the dissonance and the messiness of the track. And we get these refrains: "You really messed up everything. This is a foul tasting medicine." So we're off to a very sour and just a cynical start to the track. And then halfway through the track, the rhythm changes, the tempo changes. We have "Truth will mess you up, truth will mess you up," and this sentence just keeps on being repeated over and over and over and over again. Which kind of reminds me of the raindrops, the raindrops. But anyways, truth will mess you up. And not gonna lie, it really feels messed up. It's incredibly hectic and agonizing. It becomes even more dramatic and loud and noisy, especially with the backup vocals. All the good times, all the good times. Listening to this track really sounds like all my happy memories are just being sucked away, and now all I have left is the very sour, bitter, broken, corrupted present. And it just feels very soulless and dry and intense, and the ending is, it sort of quiets down, and it's almost like we finally have a moment of hope, finally have a moment of clarity. Psych, it's all bitterness and cynicism. And then we have the track Glassy Eyes, and it's another really quiet and humble track. We get these very sad and soulful pianos. The way they're produced, they have a strange reversed quality to them, and it's really beautiful. And we also get these strings, and these strings, they're crying, they're sobbing. It's really beautifully arranged, and the lyrics are sort of about isolation, where Tom York, or the character is portraying here, is sort of at a train station. He got off the train and looked at all these strangers' faces and realized how lonely and isolated he is. And it's really powerful. The way the song conveys loneliness and isolation is so much more profound and beautiful and poetic than many other tracks that explores loneliness to a point where it almost pushes you to tears. And also the very beautiful high-pitched ending to the track is very amazing. Soon we have the track Identikit, which is another really, really, really great song in my opinion. We get these snappy drum beats, which sort of sounds like a military march drum beat, but it has more of a crisp style to it, which is really nice. And overall, this track is a pretty catchy mid-paced song. We get these echoey vocals in the back, which is very quiet, but they're pretty great as the opening for the track. It sort of sets the stage for the track. And also the words "a moon-shaped pool" are actually uttered in these very quiet background vocals, so that's pretty cool. Anyways, we have some very angry lyrics, and then halfway through the track, the tempo and the rhythm changes once again, where Tom York repeats, "Broken hearts, make it rain, broken hearts, make it rain." And while, yes, these lyrics aren't really some of the best lyrics that Radiohead had ever written, that's definite, but still it doesn't take away from the fact that this track is absolutely enjoyable, really beautiful, really catchy as well. The climbing guitars are really sour and challenging, and then after Afterwards, the instrumentals continue to ascend even further up the chords with these very moving and beautiful heavenly synths, and overall, it's just a fantastic musical experience. Anyways, we have the track The Numbers, which again originally is called Silent Spring, and this track is amazing as well. We get these watery sounds as well as these messy pianos, which then reveals this track to be a pretty straightforward guitar ballad. There is nothing all that grand or powerful about this track, really, but still, I really love the faithful chorus. The strings are cinematic and beautiful, and this track is essentially about conserving the environment, taking back what's ours, that is our home, the earth. And it's no secret that Thom Yorke is a huge environmentalist, and if you are a hardcore Radiohead fan, you would know that at some point Thom Yorke actually crashed an environmental conservation conference in Copenhagen, which is really funny. And it's just really great to see that Thom Yorke has something of his own that he's also very passionate about, other than music. Anyways, we have Present Tense, which is a very mini-scored and trapped track. It's all the instrumentals, they're all being played in such a minimal way. It's not spacey, it's the opposite of spacey. It's very trapped, it's very clustered, very claustrophobic. And we also get these shuffles, these drum machines, very beautifully delayed vocal harmonies, which sounds very sweet, regretful, dissonant, and dreary, all at the same time, with a very beautifully magical guitar chord progression. We have lyrics like this dance, it's a weapon. Also, the lyric in you, I'm lost. Wow. It's really beautiful. I mean, Radiohead is no stranger to writing incredibly beautiful lyrics. All the way from Your Eyes They Turn Me on Weird Fishes to In You, I'm Lost. These four simple words, and it's so goddamn beautiful. Also, the very smooth, dreamy flow of instrumentals at the end. It's almost like I'm riding very smoothly down a river of happy memories while reminiscing them and realizing that they're gone and just feeling sad over it. This track. The second to last track is Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Sailor, Rich Man, Poor Man, Beggar Man, Thief. Yes, that's the title of the song. Not only does it have a strange title, the chord progression is also incredibly strange. And they sound like they make a lot of sense, but it's still very strange and off and irregular. We get these reversed noise in the beginning, which is really strange, and this track reminds me a lot of being on an airplane for some reason, because it really feels like I'm being trapped in a claustrophobic space where the air pressure is so much lower and I'm sort of unclear and not totally conscious of what's actually happening or going on around me. This is exactly what this track sounds like to me. And it's very bright and riddled and clustered and strange, and I actually really love it as well. And even though this is not one of the more eventful tracks from Radiohead, I still think it's fine. I just wish that there is more of a climax to this track, but other than that, still pretty solid. What can I say? And the album ends off with True Love Waits, which, I mean, if you have listened to the Radiohead albums, you know that every time an album ends off, the ending track is always just a punch to the heart. Same goes for this one, True Love Waits, which is a really stripped back track. We get these echoey pianos, and this is basically a moon-shaped pool version of True Love Waits, which is a track that they have already began performing in the year 2001, and they actually recorded a live version of the track performed in Oslo and put it in one of their EPs in 2001. And I actually kind of prefer that guitar version over this one, because the very clear, very primal, organic guitar sort of make this track so much more compelling and engaging. But still, The Moonshaped Pool version of True Love Waits is still phenomenal because it's just very humble and beautiful. The chord progression is just so beautiful. It's so poetic, so poignant. I'm actually humbled. I'm actually impressed how poetically written this track is. And also lyrics like, I'm not living, I'm just killing time. Damn! So, amazing track, amazing album. But of course, you know that before I finish off, I have to talk about the B-sides, and before that, I have to talk about what they play before they go onto the stage and perform live, and that would be the sound clip from a Nina Simone interview, where someone asks Nina Simone, what do you think is freedom? And Nina Simone replies by saying, freedom, it's no fear. Starting off, we have the track Harry Patch, In Memory Of, which is a really beautiful, spacey track. That sounds more like a soundtrack composed by Johnny Greenwood for a movie than an actual Radiohead song, but since Thom Yorke's vocals are on it, it's still a Radiohead song, and it's incredibly beautiful. There are these very sweet layers of strings that sound like a very sweet and wholesome and lovely farewell, and I did some research on this track, and Harry Patch is apparently some sort of war veteran. And given that Thom Yorke and I'm sure many others, including me, are anti-war because we know that war brings a lot of death and destruction and a lot of terrible consequences, it just makes this track so much more beautiful and saddening as well. And we also have the track Ill Wind, which they had released shortly after the release of the project, and again, it has a pretty usual Radiohead-esque jazzy instrumental. Feels very trapped and minuscule. My hair, oh my god. And also after the halfway point of the track, we get these very bright synths, which reminds me a lot of the track Super Collider a lot, which is really cool. And also we get these choppy, odd chord progressions, which is really strange, but it still somewhat makes sense. And also the very strange, I don't know how to describe these keyboards, but they sound like they came out of a video game, yet it doesn't have the video game sound, but for some reason they sound like they came out of a video game because of how sharp they are. These keyboards, the way they ascend up the arpeggios towards the end is just very creative and fun, and overall Ill Wind is not a bad song at all. And of course, I have to talk about Spectre. Spectre. I'm gonna say this. Radiohead Spectre is better than Sam Smith's Writing on the Wall. I don't know what Sam Mendes was thinking, because Radiohead was actually miraculously chosen for writing a theme song for a James Bond movie that is, of course, Spectre. Bond 24. Spectre. And they actually wrote a track called Spectre, and it's really, really beautiful. I love the downtrodden pianos, the strange rhythm, the very beautiful, haunting vocals, and the way the track sort of brings us into the movie, the atmosphere. It just feels really in the moment, really cinematic. And also the swelling strings are very chilling and dark and foreboding. However, apparently it's too dark for the movie, so they opt for Sam Smith's Writing on the Wall, which is little effortless. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's nothing in comparison with this Radiohead song. So that's a little disappointing. But nonetheless, I still love Spectre. Spectre from Radiohead, it's still a great song in my opinion. So yeah, that's all I'm trying to say here. That's all I'm trying to say here. Moonshaped Pool is definitely a great album, one of my favorites of the decade, and also, Radiohead had a lot of great albums, so, Moonshaped Pool is a great album as well, so it's up there with many other great albums. So, my favorite track here is, personally, Deck Stark. And my least favorite track might be Tinker Tailor's Rich Man, Poor Man, Beggar Man, Thief. And I am giving Radiohead's A Moonshaped Pool a 9 out of 10. So, Have you listened to Moonshaped Pool from 1 to 10? How much did you rate it? Like it, and subscribe if you want more. And thanks for watching. I will review more albums very soon.